I got bigger bully sticks for Luna.
Nice.
So hopefully they last longer. They're from
Bigger
Costco.
what? Were they called sticks?
Bully sticks.
Ah,
They're dehydrated bull penises.
nice. Good to know that part's renewable.
Full cow butchering. I believe in
We're not just throwing a bunch of bull penises in a ditch.
into the landfills.
Yeah, or poisoning the water system with them.
High in protein, low in fat. Got to use them.
Is that just one, or is it processed? Is it multiple?
I think that's just one.
Wow.
Yeah.
They rock like that.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of the footage, but it has a Drake archetype, it looks like.
Oh boy. Hey now.
Episode 267 of View from 202. 2-week special covering 2 wins against the 2 Texas teams, Houston and Dallas. Houston away, Dallas at home. We've been to the stadium. We've kicked off the season. The Red Bulls have 7 points from 3 matches. How are we feeling about it so far? You have 10 seconds to make a Dune or Oscars gag. After that, it's over. Your time has already started.
Or Glasgow Willy Wonka.
Oh, yeah. Remember that?
Wow.
It's
been 2
probably good we
weeks,
didn't have
so-
that episode last week.
That would have really gunked things up.
Yeah. But, yeah, I could have made all sorts of ungenerous gags about the red carpet and everything, but now it's just left to your imagination. But yeah, so we're here to recover the win against Houston and Dallas. 2-1 against Houston, 2-1 in both games, isn't it?
The perfect soccer score.
Yeah.
The ultimate soccer score.
I'm partial to a 3-2 a little bit, but
It's a little too busy.
A little
busy,
gluttonous.
Yeah, it's a little too much clutter.
It's the Detroit pizza of scorers.
Maybe, yeah. that
You
might
can't
be a good
always
one.
I
have-
like it. Well, okay, it is indulgent.
Yeah.
I think it's in a fever pitch where he says that it's either 2-1 or 3-2 that's the perfect score. So the idea is that you go up, that maybe you tie, you go up 2-1, and then you go down 2-1 and you come back to win 3-2.
The first goal feels important no matter
Yeah.
what happens, no matter if the other team has scored yet or not.
Right.
And then the second goal is either a winner or like just victory cigar.
Right.
So
True.
once you get beyond 2, you're getting a little schizophrenic.
Yeah.
You're
Asking
fattening
for a
the
little much.
hogs a little bit.
You're all over the place. You're a little bit unhinged.
Well, this 2-1 win against Houston.
Yeah, these were perfectly orderly results.
Yeah.
The ideal of football.
Yeah,
absolutely normal. Unfortunate amount of set pieces involved.
it's
though.
true.
2-1 against Houston. We see the debut of John Tolkien for this season. We see John Tolkien and Emil Forsberg linking up on the left side of the field for the first time. We see a 4-2-2, empty bucket 4-2-2-2 type situation with Van Zer and Manuel starting up top. However, that changed in the first half of the game as Peter Stroud looks like he dislocated his left shoulder a bit, and decided to come out rather than toughing through it, trying to pop it back in. As the listener will know, that was temporary. He did end up coming back the next week, but during that game against Houston, he was replaced by none other than Lewis Morgan, who gets a whole 60 minutes to play and takes advantage of it. But the result was we've seen a variety of different shapes in this last 2 weeks. What was sort of the shape after Morgan came on to replace Stroud? Did we still kind of go with the empty bucket look, or was it more flat?
Well, I think it was still a 4-4-2, but I think in the first half, it was more kind of like a little bit of the diamond shape still. And then Morgan coming in, diamond shape, but also having the second striker sort of, drop deep and peel back, kind of making it a little more, 4-2-3-1-y sometimes. But then Morgan coming on and having to find a way to fit him on the field meant, because he's can't really be used as a shuttler in the diamond. So yeah, it was more kind of flattening out the midfield and having Morgan sitting out wide, which, obviously is his comfort zone. And yeah, it ended up paying dividends, even though I doubt the team, or Schwartz was planning to give Morgan that much time and, disrupting the game plan that much that early to fit him in. But, adjusted to it, obviously. The team adjusted to it and ended up, kind of spawning some fruit and securing the result, as more importantly. So, yeah.
Yeah, we did end up coming back in this game. We were down 1-0 early on. Something that I actually forgot about, it happened so quickly. Houston scored in the 7th minute on a long ball over the top that
I guess it was Edelman who was nearest by where it ended up falling, but whether it was necessarily his responsibility is less clear.
Well, I think he had swapped places with someone. Someone had moved up top, and Daniel Edelman, solid player, but not necessarily his strong suit. I think my read on the situation is that he didn't need to go all out for that. Like the ball just goes over him. I don't know if he really makes a full jump for it, but the ball beats him over the top when I think he could have just played it more conservatively and just tried to stood the guy up and waited for help, because we had numbers back.
Well, and didn't he misplay a pass that led to that though?
We just ran through the highlights to refresh ourselves, and it cut off a little bit before that. It kind of started right on the long ball. But so I can't quite remember, and I don't want to implicate anyone. But I do. I mean, not to say I told you so, but absolutely to say I told you so. The thing about Edelman that I kind of harped on near the end of last season and kind of in some of our off-season sort of squad planning episodes about Edelman as a long-term commitment in defensive midfield and deep midfield is that, yeah, on moments like that where you kind of need your defensive midfielder, your 6, to be a sort of auxiliary center back and to slip in when defenders go forward and just sort of be a defensive presence and a physical defensive presence in kind of improvised moments like that. With a player like Edelman, at least now at his current age and physique, you're going to kind of lose a little bit of that, and you're going to have goals like that leak sometimes. Just long balls like that leak sometimes, where a sturdier player can maybe take care of that. And that's kind of my issue as far as Edelman being our only real dedicated defensive midfielder in the squad right now. So, just something that obviously it's only happened once so far this season, but could end up being in the aggregate kind of an issue unless they maybe bring in some different options for midfield.
I agree. I feel like kind of a lot of good teams in MLS have someone who's always in the archetype of a Darlington Nagbe or a Dax McCarty or something like that, and I don't really feel like we have that presence on our team even across all of our midfielders.
Yeah, I went back and looked, and it's Frankie who gets the ball weirdly stuck at his feet that starts that sequence. But it was further up the pitch. I don't know. It was a weird sequence where we were. It
wasn't necessarily a thing where it was like, oh, he gave it away.
Right. Like Houston
spot.
makes 3 passes, and they we're still on the back foot, but then Houston passes it back before doing the long ball. So it's sort of a situation that I think you can expect the team will be in again, even though ideally we don't have a giveaway like that. I do think outside of that giveaway, Frankie was pretty excellent in both of these games. It just kind of got caught underneath him. But yeah, I agree that, that is sort of something you'd hope to see Edelman get better at. And this match, I think, was also a glimpse at, what we might have to face when one of these midfielders goes down, because right now we have a pretty solid pairing or pretty inked in pairing of Edelman and Amaya in the middle, and then Peter Stroud kind of supplementing as well as that. But, I think one the major reason that Lewis Morgan comes on for him is that he's really sort of the only midfielder.
There's
on the
no
bench.
other central midfielders to
Yeah.
play. I mean, both because of his Morgan's injury, load management, and the fact that they literally had no other central midfielders implies that this isn't a move they would have made in an ideal situation. So
Yeah. And, it works out here. I think the team still, this Houston result is quality, like definitely good to dig out, come from behind win on the road against a team that made a conference semifinal last year. They were in the CCL this week. That is sort of an asterisk, I guess, if you want to give one.
and also missing Herrera. But
Yeah, missing Herrera. They had just beat St. Louis in CCL the week before, and then they were getting ready to play Columbus in the next round right after us. Weirdly enough, they just wrapped up on their second leg with Columbus like an hour before we started recording tonight. Very early kickoff. Don't know what was going on there. So that is sort of some of the asterisks that you can put there. Bossy also started on the bench. Edelman in the pregame quotes was singling him out in particular, and I think when he came on, he was actually more dangerous. But the way the Red Bulls dig back into this is goals from Elias Manuel and Lewis Morgan. Elias Manuel comes off of a header, which is this for his first header for this team?
I think he might have had one before, and I think he might have had one before because we probably made jokes about his hair when he scored it. Because I don't know, his hair looked a little neater last couple of weeks. Looks like he tightened it up a little bit, and maybe that helped. Rooney said that tightening his hair situation up helped him on headers, so maybe that's what's going on.
I mean,
here.
aerodynamics
Right.
comes into play,
But it's
That's why Richard Jefferson was so good at dunking. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a goal that comes a little bit of combination from Dante Van Zer, but I think it was really the play was created further up the pitch. You see some nice wriggling out of pressure in the midfield, and then the ball finds its way to Emil Forsberg, who then finds Van Zer, who chips it over to Elias Manuel for the header. It's not quite a tap-in goal. We'll have more of that later because it still requires some focus and technique to get it on frame. For me, it was funny though because I thought up until that point, Elias Manuel was having a very difficult game. This is a weird pairing of games for Manuel because I think
He's just a weird guy.
he's a weird guy.
He's just a weird guy in general.
He was really going. He went long stretches of both of these games, looking like he'd never played soccer before, and then also had quite excellent, link-up play with his teammates, and then scored a critical goal amongst it. I think my takeaway is that this is the luxury of being a striker, that you can be shit 85 minutes of the game, and it doesn't really matter. You only need to be good like twice.
Right.
I mean, many strikers have made their entire careers off of that, haven't they?
Yeah. But glad to see him get off the score sheet for the season. And then the second goal is really just being opportune. Houston, Artur, that's a familiar name. Houston passes it straight to Lewis Morgan, and then he just hits a nice curler, screamer right into the corner to give us the advantage. I think they said it was 500 days since Lewis Morgan's last goal for us. Which,
Almost 2 years.
makes me feel weird that it's been that long. That's some food for thought.
Very characteristic Morgan strike. After he picked it up, I feel like that's just kind of his trademark to just be in that sort of half left channel and just smash it, and you'll be in perfect position to smash it to the post with his foot, with his right foot. So.
Yeah, he just knows how to make contact with the ball.
Yeah, and it was a nice sight to see. We also see some appearances from Cameron Harper, who comes in for Dante Van Zer. We see Andres Reyes in his debut for this season as we go 5 to the back to close out the game. That's something that we'll see again in the Dallas game right afterwards. And
Houston still had a couple chances near the end.
they did.
Not cut and dry, but road games never are.
Yeah.
I thought Token looked a little. He looked a little flat early on, especially.
He grew into
It was
the
very
game.
clear that he was just shaking off the cobwebs or just like revving up the engine from just being out for, I guess, longer than we had initially anticipated. But that I think goes away, as we look to Dallas as well.
And I also think, in a way, it is a little bit character building to come out of a kind of hard fought 2-1 victory.
Right.
Those margins were obviously not there last season.
Well, and I think we'll get into this, again with the Dallas game also, but our friend and planet Earth's friend Profe Mafu said the other night after the Dallas game as well that these are obviously impressive results and stuff like that, but these are when you actually watch the games and the dynamics of it and stuff, it's kind of taking everything to secure them. Mm-hmm. So the team's going to need to find another gear if they're going to be able to navigate this whole season, and because you're not going to be able to win these kinds of games every single week.
Right. But also it's kind of, to me, like, how are we going to sustain a level of that to whatever standard to kind of be able to keep up that attitude and energy? And I think a lot of that will have to come to motivation from coaching as well as kind of, the players as well.
We'll find out. The game always answers your questions.
That's true. That's true.
Most nowadays it is. For a while, it was leaving us hanging for a little bit there. But yeah, the team looked more dynamic, and it still continues to be a big tone shift for me compared to last season, where we were kind of throwing everything at it. We're pushing the squad, I think, or stretching the squad to its maximum sort of already on weeks 2 and 3, which is not good. But it does feel different than last year, when last year just felt, in the year before, felt like a waiting game for maybe we'll score a goal somehow by accident, and just knock on wood that we don't make any errors at all. This game against Houston, the team already felt more dynamic, felt much more capable of combining with each other, felt like the team just had a lot more intuition and trust of where they would be. You saw players just anticipating each other's movement, kind of just basic stuff, but still felt like a shift in a meaningful direction compared to the Struber years.
More ground passes into the center of the midfield than before.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's just kind of piggyback on from our last episode, all of 2 weeks ago, that Isla is however you pronounce his name. I think there's a third pronunciation in the mix.
People are
that some Apple person put in.
Ayla, right?
Okay, I don't know, but however you pronounce his name, he's kept up the form and the impressiveness, and just kind of quarterbacking the team from the back and being an asset in that way. So, nothing new to report there, and that's a good thing. So
I would say he arguably, to me at least, even he has a calming presence, because he can take a ball with the first touch and settle it, and it seems like he's moving in slow motion, but clearly he's composed enough to be able to make whatever play he needs to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, 3 games into the season, he and Nealis have started every game, and it's feels intuitive already. No question marks from anyone. He's kind of really asserted himself into the squad already. I think we can start getting into the Dallas game, because I think some of the takeaways will be similar. Just when I was saying a second ago of how in years past, it felt like the hope was to be perfect all 90 minutes and then, bumble our way into a wonder strike from Morgan or Lucchinius, or just sort of, bundle something in ugly. And I think this Dallas game is a good counterexample, where it's a game where we do make a sort of weird, clumsy mistake in the goal that we give up, but we were still able to power through and not quite cruise, but get a solid victory here at home. This game is our home opener. It was played in the pouring rain, quite a significant amount of rain throughout this.
But apparently it was way worse in Philly.
Oh yeah, they abandoned.
Yeah,
they
their field looked
postponed.
way shittier. Yeah.
I said rewatching the highlights here and looking at it through the the 90th minute, it was quite impressive how not muddy the field was.
It was impressive in person, just generally.
Yeah.
Good condition.
And it was a pretty decent crowd considering the weather. The weather was pretty shitty.
Yeah.
It was not like very appetizing to go outside, let alone go sit out for 3 hours. So
yeah. So I guess now we can also just take the opportunity to comment on being back in the stadium. First time back in the stadium in 2024. They've made an interesting change right off the bat, where they've tarped off the top 8-ish rows around the entire stadium on the second deck, which, maybe they should just bit the bullet and done that earlier. I think it did kind of.
Well, it does. It is just kind of does feel like the ultimate concession 15 years later that just the stadium was built a little too big.
It's overbuilt, yeah.
At least for the club's sake. I mean, I guess there's another article out this week where de Grand Prix was talking about how they want to attract all these other kinds of events and gin up that kind of business at the stadium, which for that kind of stuff, they probably do need 25,000 seats. And it is an asset in that way. But for the actual soccer team that's there, as the main tenant, probably about 5,000 seats too big. I mean, for all the, hand wringing and discourse about attendance over the years, it really has always just been a thing where if the stadium had just been, like 20,000 like it is in most other MLS cities, it would just look like normal attendance.
Like it will be for like NYCFC.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah. So, just kind of the ultimate sort of, kind of concession on that. Maybe they can figure out something interesting to do with those upper areas or something with the tarps in days to come. But in the meantime, it seemed like you were just saying, Brit, it did seem to kind of do its job to some extent. Especially considering the rain, it was, you wouldn't expect a sellout or anything like a full crowd, but it did, kind of condense people a bit more. Down towards like the bottom of the upper deck.
Is it the Warriors' new stadium that they're gonna have like the top section of like whatever?
Clippers,
or is it Clippers with the smoking section?
Like a cop. Yeah,
they should make a smoking section on the top of RBA.
Oh, God.
But I've always said kind of that I believe if we had SKC's stadium, we would be looked at as one of the bigger fan bases in MLS.
Right.
So
I mean, SKC only seats like 18,000 people
yeah.
or something like that. But
there was one thing I was reading, just so I might have been like on our MLS or something about the tarps the other night, where somebody was saying that Orlando is kind of a similar thing. Where I mean, obviously Orlando came into the league as a major fad with big attendance, but they built their stadium a bit too big. It's like 28K, and they can barely half it out these days.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see if maybe it just hits a equilibrium where people, it's just accepted more that the stadium is going to be a little empty across the league. Because I'm thinking about baseball. Baseball's so different too, because you have 81 games at home.
Yeah.
But like you get some people who don't really know the sport who come in and hand wringing it and do the hand wringing of like, oh, is baseball dying? When it's like clearly not. It's like, it's normal for most games to not be sold out. There's only a couple of teams that do anything close to that. And maybe the league in general is just getting closer to that.
Well, I would imagine it's been some. I mean, it's not like I don't think it's not like I doubt any other TV partners in years past haven't complained about this, but I imagine it's like an Apple thing of just like, okay, let's make the crowds look a little better. Let's try to avoid kind of shitty looking crowds if we can. And that's one way to engineer it. So,
well, I feel like maybe just coming ahead, places like Orlando, more than us, maybe will benefit from having these overbuilt stadiums with a renewed World Cup interest, especially with it being in the U.S. But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at some old photos, sometimes I'm surprised of like how full the stadium is, and I think. I mean, another factor is just having a second team in New York really has sort of split the population of like the amount of people willing to go and pay money to go to a soccer game in person, right. Still with how popular soccer is, that's still kind of a limited number, even in such a big city. So like when you cut the potential diehard audience in half, I think it does probably remove a couple thousand that we were getting from 2010 to 2015.
Right.
But yeah, and Peaches, as you said, the new City Stadium is proposed to be smaller, I think, than RBA. So, go figure.
But yeah, the one that just blows me away is that Nashville is something. I think Nashville's like 30, maybe even like 35K, and they're already struggling, like we saw a couple weeks ago. So.
Yeah, it was interesting watching the Red Bulls playing Houston too, because I didn't realize that Houston has replaced all their seats to go with that like spackle pattern that everyone has.
To cover up bad filling.
And their stadium is newer than Red Bull Arena. So, because I've kind of had the crank take of like, the Red Bulls should just have red seats now, but the other half of me is like, well, it does kind of feel stupid to just throw out the perfectly fine seats, it kind of does feel wasteful, but I'm seeing other teams are doing it all the time. I wonder if they're going to consider it, now that they've kind of bitten the bullet on more aggressively.
But then they have kind of wavered from red being like the only color.
That's true,
to some extent also.
I think
that was another thing where it was like, I mean, and this is just, I guess, kind of like a paradox of it all, but like, the 2015 and City coming in did split just sort of the gross fan base for MLS across the metro area. But also it kind of energized a little bit, the people, the diehards who are already there. And part of that was like, okay, we're committing to red. Like it's,
right.
We are team red, New York is red, all that kind of stuff. And that's been a little bit de-emphasized recently.
They were sort of forced into that. Because
Right.
I think also the kit that the 2015 home kit with the red sleeves, I don't know, but I feel like it was almost an accident that lined up with the City joining the league and, they went all in on red. I also just think that the stadium would look like just really nice if it had like red seats and it just had like New York written in the like. I hope they don't go. I don't know why that's gone out of style. Just like the letters in the seats. I think it just looks
RBNY or something.
Yeah. I think that would look really good, and I also wonder if maybe with all of the scandal happening with the Red Bull F1 team, I wonder if just like the blue with the Red Bull logo might actually become like, maybe they're like, oh, maybe we don't want to have this sort of look going on, because that's the most similar our team branding is to like the Red Bull stuff, is sort of that blue in the logo, and it doesn't really pop up anywhere else.
Right.
So, but this also reminds me that it is funny on the big games, on like playoff games and like season openers and stuff, just taking the path back to the city and taking the subway home. There's just like a significant chunk of people like going back to the city and going back like on my train to my neighborhood, which always kind of catches me off guard. Yeah. Especially since it does feel like the team has sort of abandoned the city the last couple of years. Like you're saying, they kind of went the whole New Yorkers red thing.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I should have gone off on that tangent.
Yeah,
but yeah.
It really feels like they've kind of just cordoned themselves off to the suburbs, which is a mistake and lame. But maybe it's worth mentioning that cities did have passed like a city planning commission vote to build their stadium in Queens, which I know we've talked about a few times. But it's an interesting position, because now, like in many ways, that location in like right next to Citi Field is sort of like the mirror to Harrison,
right,
where it's like one train line takes you there. It's at the very end, almost at the very end of the train line.
It's on the penultimate stop.
It's on the penultimate stop. It's like, convenient, but also like low-key not convenient for a lot of people too. It's like for a lot of people in the area, it's going to take an hour to get there at the minimum.
I'm already dreading going to Mets games this summer.
It's on the eastern edge of the city, and then the Red Bulls are like on the western edge of the transit network. So like there is a potential to really like draw like an east-west split maybe here. And I don't know.
Have
like,
Manhattan and Brooklyn.
I was going to say, we're the Manhattan team.
Yeah, you could. If you live in the Village, well, I guess it won't take you that long to get to Citi Field either. But if you live in like Lower Manhattan,
it could be potentially quicker for Red Bull than Willets Point.
We're
Absolutely.
the downtown team.
Yeah.
They're the uptown team.
Yeah. So something to consider. But anyway, I showed up like right as the game kicked off.
Classic.
Yeah,
That's
classic.
early for you.
I know. I missed the path by like 30 seconds.
Oh,
I at least was busy. I was seeing Dune right before this, so I was.
You were Dune.
I was doing Dune. Yeah, I was all in. So I missed the new light show, but I did notice that the lights in general, they seem to be all bright LEDs, and it felt brighter.
is it like all red? Is that like what's going on?
They have
Like doing the Austin
I
thing?
want. They probably. I imagine they installed RGB panels so that they could accommodate for other events. But yeah, for our things, it was just kind of like going red. It didn't feel too janky or anything, or like too dramatic. Even
No, like Brit said, it like felt palpably brighter inside.
yeah, the lights
stadium.
itself were like.
Yeah.
It felt like daytime.
Yeah, which I don't know. It's felt nice in some ways, but it's energy efficient, so I guess that's good. I mean, I guess the Mets also updated their lights this offseason, so maybe it'll be different at Citi Field too.
Maybe it's
this is just the future, I guess.
Is there like an efficiency thing going around for lights?
It's local
I
law
think it's-
97 just kicking in, making everyone update
The
their
LEDs.
stuff.
I think it's I think it's just a general thing that there's just a lot of new bells and whistles for stadiums being hawked around these days. So got to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but I think there was one closer when he came in the 90s. I don't know if it was Trevor Hoffman. I don't think it was Rivera, where they would like actually flicker the lights on and off. But
And that was considered like the craziest.
I feel like
Maybe.
it being sort of lo-fi was kind of cool. It's like,
Right.
whoa, they're like really trying to like come up with something and like just go into the switchboard and be like, oh,
like turning it off.
and the fact that
on.
it kind of like took a second to warm up again, like I think that kind of like added to the charm. But when you have the full bells and whistles, I'm like, okay, I'm less impressed,
That's how I feel about drone shows. And I know
Yeah.
that there's going to be a drone show at RBA this
There
year.
is?
Yeah, apparently. But it's like fireworks, there's like a bit of randomness to it, right? Like it's going to explode and like go its own like random kind of way. But drone shows are like so like I've never sat through an entire one, but to me it feels like they'd be very like choreographed and like computerized, right? And like not very organic feeling because it's so pre-programmed.
The fireworks should also just be, they should make it so you can't computerize it and you just have to pay a bunch of 16-year-olds to vaguely point it in the right direction.
Yeah, and then light the fuse at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. This is how we're gonna do it after we have the Butlerian Jihad. Here we go. There's our Dune bit. Yeah, so stadium experience.
New. Well, I guess it wasn't new, but I tried the popcorn chicken.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay.
How's the mac and cheese?
I had the mac and cheese before, and it was pretty mid.
Just
then.
as
It was
sad
pretty
as
mid
it was
now.
before. Yeah.
I had the loaded fries. It was fine.
Yeah.
I believe the photo on the kiosk suggested there might be scallions or something on it, and I don't think there was. Maybe Petite Greens had exhausted all the scallions.
You didn't get the new farro salad at Petite.
Oh well, I did go by the like Super Dog or whatever stand, where I guess it's like foot long hot
Yeah.
dogs or some shit. But they were freaking sold out.
Wow.
I got to the stadium like right as the lineups were being announced, and that was when they were already out of
Which
the Super
stand
Dogs
is
or
that?
whatever.
It's like in the other corner of
It's
202.
behind the away goal, or it's behind the away,
Okay.
the north end. So
I saw, one of the things they added last season or the season before was like the Harrison Hot Dog Company.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like they had a special like hot dog they're doing for a little bit, but I feel like they've given up on that. I feel like it's just the standard hot dog again because now it just says Stadium Hot Dog.
I think
And
that
it's the
stand's
same
always
price.
just been regular hot dogs.
I swear like the first couple weeks or something, there was like a special hot dog that had like chips on it or something.
Maybe they put relish on it or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, maybe we'll keep touring it. I do think I had like 8,000% of my sodium intake on the loaded fries, but all right, it was fine. It wasn't the worst thing ever.
Peaches, how do you rate the
Chicken tenders and fries.
yeah,
I thought they were the same as they are every season.
Same as it
Actually,
ever was.
timeless?
Mine were a little warm. So,
A little warm.
Yeah.
Big things happening.
Too hot?
no, just like they were vaguely
They were, like,
lukewarm,
not-
not just
A little
stale and cold.
lukewarm. Okay, I thought you were saying a little warm, which kind of cracked me up. 'Cause like, were they hot or not? Okay. Well, we still have a stadium host. Our previous one, I guess, left.
But kind of, their stadium host was a guest host.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Was it Connor Lade?
No, it was one of the DJs from Z100 who'd been like a Metro Stars fan or something. So
Okay. That was another good appearance for this, good feature for this game, is that the sprinkling in of, celebrities that were just people, like, it was just people. I don't think we were expected to know who they were.
Yeah.
Actually, it would be funnier if it was actually just random people, like, how on the how Jimmy Carson used to have random people on to do random talents or something.
Yeah, it's just ordinary people off the street.
Yeah. And then Tiki Barber, I guess, was around to do something.
Oh man,
a ceremonial coin toss.
they got Tiki Barber, the Tiki Barber.
Well, they got him to do a ceremonial coin toss, and he apparently lost because they attacked our side first, or we attacked our side first.
Oh yeah, Dallas was attacking the south, made us attack the southboard first half, which is annoying. It's annoying when teams do that, especially if you're like a pretty random Western Conference team. Like, you should just follow tradition. Like,
let's not lose sight of the fact that they were able to steal away Tiki Barber from his from otherwise doing the ribbon cutting at Piscataway Kia or whatever.
Yeah.
They
Tiki Barber, folks.
But
The vibes are great.
But it did end up working out that we attacked our side because that was the half that we had the penalty, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it worked out. Although it is sort of annoying selfishly because it works out quite nice being in 202 where the second half you attack towards us. I think that's better because in the first half you're like, oh, we're going to be able to see so much more the second half. To have it the other direction, a little bit annoying. I was even briefly considering going over to one of those standing room only bars down in the bottom half, but everyone was there because it was so rainy. So
so wet. The water's too wet, you guys.
Yeah. But we did indeed begin by attacking the South Ward. The Red Bulls went out with a familiar personnel in this match. We started, although in a 4-2-3-1 here. A little bit different than the previous two matches. Same back line, Amaya and Edelman anchoring the midfield. And then, Forsberg, of course, up top in the midfield. And then Peter Stroud comes back from his shoulder mishaps. But then we see Elias Manuel and Lewis Morgan kind of leading the line, so to speak. Morgan, of course, a little bit pushed back in the midfield.
Sandro was listening to us.
I know. We were wondering, like, hey, at what point do you just have Morgan be that second striker? And lo and behold, it pays off pretty much immediately. What did you think of the 4-2-3-1 and this look compared to previous things?
It felt familiar. Well, I have to say, when I was in the arena and I saw we had a goalkeeper with the number 31, we're playing a 4-2-3-1, I kind of got taken back to 2014 a little bit.
Or 2015.
Or 2015. But like I was thinking like the Eric Alexander, Dax McCarty pairing, 4-2-3-1.
I feel like that was a flat 4-4-2, wasn't it?
It was until they saved the season by switching it to a 4-2-3-1.
Okay. To me, the platonic 4-2-3-1 is Dax and Felipe anchoring the midfield, and then Sasha up top.
I'm gonna show my being like 2 or 3 years older than all you guys by saying my ideal is Dax McCarty and Timu Tainio underneath Thierry in the hole with Luke Rogers up top. So that's my yardstick.
So basically what we're saying is 4-2-3-1 classic Red Bull formation. Yeah, no matter what era we're looking at.
What about Rafa Marquez, you guys? Let's keep going further back. But yeah, 4-2-3-1 this game. We get out to a lead. It was a sloppy game because it was really pouring quite a bit. It was also refreshing to have a game where it was raining, but there was none of that thunder bullshit. So we knew we could just get on with it. Both teams were struggling for grip, you could see. I think the Red Bulls were Doing a little less worse, though. Dallas looked like a team that had never seen rain before, at least in the first, 15 minutes. I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, constantly losing the handle.
Yeah. And their sort of right center back, Tuamasi, really rough day for him at the office. He indeed is the guy who concedes the penalty to the Red Bulls, but I think we had started picking on him pretty consistently, which is smart because he was really struggling to deal with Lewis Morgan and
the rest of Dallas's back line that we were kind of seeing more in the first half from our end of the stadium was pretty solid though.
Yeah.
And that's how much this Tuamasi guy stood out, because both kind of, answering, most of the questions that the Red Bulls were presenting them. But also they were especially playing against a team like the Red Bulls that plays the way we do, playing some pretty dangerous possession in the back, moving it around and circling it around. And, we're able to escape a lot of it. But yeah, that one guy, just looked very shaky from start to finish.
Yeah, and Morgan was pretty consistently making runs and playing off his shoulder leading up to that. Tolkien as well was getting active on the overlap. That Morgan Tolkien Forsberg sort of set was doing pretty good work on that left side, and it felt like that they were feeling like they were making progress there. And then we finally break through when we make a solid recovery in midfield, and if they can dump it off to Tolkien, and Tolkien hits a really solid chip over the top to Morgan, who just gets yanked down by Tuamasi, and clear penalty. It looked for a second like Morgan was going to take it. In fact, Morgan was holding on to the ball for quite some time. And I don't know, what was your read? Do you think that he decided last minute? It almost looked like to me like he decided, okay, actually, Forsberg, you can take it.
But, I feel like he lined up for it, and then they probably had a conversation in training about
my
who takes
assumption
it.
from the jump was that Forsberg, especially consider everything else was built around him, that he would also be the penalty taker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It seems like that's what was determined, and then Morgan probably was like, oh, okay, I should just give it up, maybe.
I think...
But apparently it is a thing that, I would imagine if Morgan felt confident to pick up the ball, then it's been a thing in training and in, their briefings or whatever, that, Morgan is the penalty taker. So
I don't remember if Forsberg literally picked up the ball and gave it to him, but I feel like I saw them talking a little bit, and the vibe that I got was like, you earn the penalty, you can take it. And then after the VAR check was over, Morgan was actually like, wait, never mind, and gave it to Forsberg.
Maybe he cooled off and he decided against it.
Maybe. But Forsberg slots it away into the left corner. Pius guessed correctly, but it was no good. Well taken penalty. We go up 1-0. Forsberg's first goal for the club. Coming back after the half, we go up 2-0, and really nice passage of play. I thought we were controlling the game quite well and being dangerous. Frankie, I think, has a really nice, guards the ball and dribbles out of pressure in transition and flicks it up to Elias Manuel, who has a great, I believe, first touch flick to Forsberg, who slots it really effortlessly over to Morgan, who makes it easy to go 2-0 up. And I think this is
it's my favorite kind of counterattack.
Yeah.
When you feed a ball from midfield into a striker with his back to goal, who flicks it onto everybody else who is running with the ball. Just kind of platonic ideal of that. Not necessarily the type of goal that, say, during the Marsh Red Bulls years, that not the type of counterattack that we would be necessarily playing. But if there's more of that in the future, I'd love to see it. And it's especially good to see from Elias Manuel being at the center of it. So
Excuse me, I was taught that this is Rosenball sport.
oh yeah, it was interesting listening to the highlights for this because we watched it in person. And yeah, we noticed this a little bit in the Houston game too. The way that people are talking about Red Bull as like a cultural institution, like a football cultural institution, now that Forsberg is here, is so strange.
yeah,
It's like these people did not watch 14 different, TIFO football videos and athletic interest videos about Red Bull football like we have.
Like on one level, I totally get it, and I'm not surprised. But on the other, it's still shocking to sort of hear it. one, it feels like this team is not even necessarily the most ultra Red Bull orthodox it's ever
Right.
been. Like, I think in some ways you could say under Marsh we were much more, and then on paper certainly under Struber that was the most like all in Red Bull inside man, sort of situation that we've had, I think, ever. Right now, Schwartz feels, he's still doing pressing and everything, but it feels less rigidly ideological to me than previous iterations. So it's funny that now you see commentators be like, "Oh, they're playing football the Red Bull way, the Rasenball sport way." When I don't think they even refer to themselves as Rasenball sport. I think they're embarrassed about that, aren't they?
I was just going to say too, it might just be a thing where like all the games have national broadcasts that are pushing like national branding
Right.
ideas now, as opposed to, I mean, MSG, never really was all about like, oh, in some moments they were kind of negative about being like, oh, playing the Red Bull way, or like this is, Ragnick soccer or whatever you want to say it. It was never really characterized that way on MSG.
That's true.
Whereas now these national broadcasters, they've got to kind of pull something, and that's
Right.
what they're going for.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think the other part of it that surprises me is just how like Forsberg is sort of the lightning rod for it. Where again, it's like, look, he's been a super player so far. He's been very composed, and he seems like he's making the whole team better. But he's not a super famous guy, So like the fact that he's getting all this attention is still, and this sort of media deference is still a bit odd to me. But I guess I'll take it.
I did make a joke during the game that it was nice to get some preferential treatment because I feel like they called an easy foul for Forsberg once. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like, I know what you're saying about us maybe not being like total orthodox right now, but I do feel like our press is very like efficiently effective right now.
Well, I said this last episode, and which is that during the worst of like the Struber years, it was frustrating to me because it didn't even feel like we were visibly pressing that much, and it does feel different than that. Like you can visibly see us like press and figure out when we're making our decisions to do that. So
well,
that
I think
is
it's
true.
maybe it's not even like more of like our pressing action towards wherever the ball is, but we're just collecting those second balls in wherever, I think in the beginning of the Dallas game, maybe Dallas was passing there a little bit more, but we're having men in those areas of those like anticipatory second balls rather than just kind of like maybe being a little too proactive about driving towards where the ball is entirely. There's kind of like a little calculus going on, it feels like.
Yeah, and for me, I think part of it is that we finally have a bit of that protagonism going forward with Forsberg to sort of organize ourselves around and have a threat, and someone who's not afraid to ask and command the ball. Thinking back to the Lassane and Struber and even Armas years, I think so much of the problem was that we had a midfield of like complementary parts, I think, and who were not being encouraged to take initiative, and were being encouraged to think about like the pressing triggers first and making sure that they weren't letting down the pressing system rather than about creating danger and driving forward and creating something themselves. And it feels like Forsberg has sort of punctured through that. And it reminds me a bit of, what I've said a little bit across the last couple of years of how sometimes a new signing like Kaku in 2018 kind of just can be a statement and bring some sense of purpose or like a refresher to a team. And it tentatively seems like maybe that's happening with Forsberg. Forsberg is different than Kaku though, in that we didn't go out and spend money on him the way we did with Kaku. There is still the element where he kind of was sent over from Leipzig as a gift, and we can talk about this a little bit more later with further transfer rumors. So that is different. Although he does seem to be taking the role seriously. He does seem to be an effective captain so far. I did watch the match day video. I think it's the first match day video I've watched in years. And, I'm vaguely impressed by his demeanor and manner on the field so far. I'm feeling pretty good on the whole about my prognosis right before the season, where I said, I think I have a hunch that this team might start hot and Forsberg might start hot, but my doubt is about the depth long term. But 3 matches in with 7 points. Looks like we maybe have caught some teams by surprise so far.
I'll play bad cop a little bit too. and kind of piggyback off of a little bit of what we were just saying, where it doesn't feel as ideological through these first few weeks as it did in the recent years, but it does seem like the team is a little less suffocating defensively as a whole. I don't know if that's necessarily the press. I don't think it is the press necessarily not working as much, because like you guys are saying, you are seeing a little bit more kind of purpose and a little just more numbers kind of forward. I think in the press, and I think some of that is the diamond formation just being a good setup to have a lot of numbers to send short distances forward. But like I said with the Houston game too, in the Dallas game also, they, especially in the second half, I mean, part of it was game state, them being down 2-0, but they had kind of had us on the ropes for a lot of the second half, and it was not necessarily, a cruise, as you said it, Brit. And obviously they got the goal through Ferreira, which, mind you, maybe you guys do. I don't necessarily want to get bogged down in all the stuff about the wall collapsing or all that kind of thing, because as you know, and as my ideology follows, set piece goals are not real. They're not part of the portrait that we're painting of everything. So is what it is. You give up goals like that sometimes on set pieces, but Dallas was still able to get in that position and get a few other chances towards the end as they were kind of had us under siege. Again, like I said with the Houston game, and when I kind of paraphrased Profe and saying that this was another game where it kind of took everything. It took everything in the tank to secure the result. But the other end of that sword is that the fact that we are securing these kinds of results, and we are going into this kind of defensive crouch like we had to against Dallas and still coming out of the other end of it, is still a positive sign. So, but yeah, again, like Britt said, the issue is whether they can keep this up over the course of the year. And performances like Houston and Dallas, you're not going to be able to pull that out every single week. So we'll have to see how the team adjusts to different types of situations, how the team adjusts to different types of personnel they're going to have to use as the season goes on and injuries and form, takes hold. So, but yeah, all things considered, 7 points out of 3 games, including 2 on the road, is about as ideal as it can get for a start.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to grind these results out over the season, it helps to be able to sort of go on cruise control in some games too. And there was a moment in this Dallas game after we scored that second goal, it looked like maybe we might be able to put the game away. I think, if you get a third, or even if you just make it like 10, 15 more minutes, I think maybe this game becomes a lot less scrappy, which is why it was a little frustrating to give away such a needless free kick in the first place. Like the foul was really sort of sloppy. We had numbers back. I think the giveaway that precipitated it was not necessary, but even looking past that, Duncan kind of just bundles over the guy, and it was not
it's real
necessary.
reckless.
Yeah, it was reckless. All the wall was a weird situation where and it was right in front of us, so we could see it. Where Coronel and everyone was yelling at each other. Everyone knew something was wrong, and it's beyond me what the specifics of that are. I can't comment on that. But
it does have to be said that we just fired the supposed set piece guru manager who was supposedly cooking all that. So I guess they're back to the drawing board on set pieces this year.
I guess the one thing that I'm sort of encouraged by is that the players seemed to be aware something was wrong. It wasn't just
shrugging your shoulders.
Yeah. I don't know what the deal was. And then the guys were roughly in the right place. The ball just went between 2 of the guys. So, hopefully they figure that out. It's third game of the season. But it's a shame because I think we had the potential to close that out with a little less nerves. I think Elias Manuel had another game where he at times looked out of place, but at other times was quite good holding the ball up and facilitating play. Like he did for the second goal. So, we'll keep an eye out on that. it is sort of interesting. I want to see this combination of Morgan and him up top. I think it worked a lot better than him and Van Zer. I would prefer to see that going forward.
Yeah.
Especially since Van Zer is hurt for who knows how long.
Yeah, both of them seem to be just generally much more involved with play and build up than just having Van Zer there. Also, you mentioned the Kaku thing earlier, I guess, in terms of like Forsberg having a little bit of that energy. But I felt like in terms of a playing style too, to make this parallel again, like I kind of like BWP had a little thing with Taylor Twellman, an interview, and he brought up Kaku, where he's like, he just talked to him, he's like, whatever Jesse tells you, just I'll make the run, just like get in front or whatever. In that kind of sense, I feel like the way that Forsberg is very like progressive and like plays balls forward, I think he's sending a lot of those balls, but he doesn't have like a BWP necessarily to run onto them. My main frustration with Manuel in general is just like he doesn't really seem to make a lot of forward runs or like try to get in behind necessarily.
Well, it seems like he's being encouraged to play with his back to goal and be that dropping in and link up striker and having some good moments for it. I mean, I think there's he's obviously
the goal build up obviously
the background on him is that he's a winger being converted towards the middle more. So it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive that he would be that kind of hold up striker, but he does have that kind of like little bit of like kind of stocky body. He's not really tall, but he does have that kind of like stocky body and can like, sort of force himself over the ball. And he's also pretty good at little flicks and stuff like that, which I guess comes a little bit out of being a winger. So in that sense, I think they are maybe finding the right elements of his game and the right way to utilize elements of his game. And I would hope to see, I think there's potential to see that grow over the course of the year. So I'm going to keep my eye on it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like what I see from him is that he has like a lot of the skill set that's necessary. Sometimes it feels like he's reacting to the ball instead of maybe kind of playing ahead. I think Schwartz on the sideline showed some frustration for him, like not making a couple of runs. So yeah, I just think that if he's coached into having a better instinct in that position, he could, come out to be a good player. But also, I would like to see us try to upgrade that position as well.
He also looks less fit, but I agree. Also, for what it's worth, Morgan was really towing the back line the whole game and really aggressively making runs. But it stuck out to me that he wasn't like annoyed or he didn't seem frustrated when people weren't sending him. Where in years past, if we would have guys, constantly making runs and it felt like just nobody was looking for them. These games so far, it felt like,
there's a trust that eventually it'll get there.
Yes, exactly. So the players seem to be on the same page about that, at least. It remains, I don't know how it's going to work when Yengar gets here. I'm not totally sure. Peter Stroud was, did the job on Saturday. But, Harper comes in. It's not a like for like replacement. And there was a stretch where like Harper and Duncan, it felt like both of them were just like running into a wall. It felt like we, for most of the game, were having some success on that right side of the field. And then all of a sudden, Harper, who seems, he's a little smaller, it just like was losing a lot of these physical battles. And then Duncan, I don't know, just it's never really been a strong suit. And I think it was a relief to see Dylan Nealis come in instead there and sort of help lock us down. We also closed out the game with 5 at the back with Andres Reyes again, and it got the job done.
Who looked kind of shaky, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, I mean, not a huge surprise, I guess, given the limited minutes. I don't, this is another game, we don't have to get into it in depth, but it's another game where I'm sitting here wondering how Dante Van Zer fits into the squad. I don't really see it. Also just more question marks for why we bought him in the first place.
Well, maybe that's a segue into the Hollywood portion of the show.
The thing everyone's here for.
Yeah.
The real trophy, which is a new striker rumor. None other than Red Bull darling, on and off again, Timo Werner. I'm not pronouncing it the German way.
If he's going to come here, he's going to fucking say it our way.
Yeah.
Tommy Warner.
Fucking Timmy Timmy Trumpets.
I've considered it, and I've decided against doing a Daniel Day-Lewis Gangs of New York accent. But you can just imagine it. Yeah, Timo Werner currently in contract with Rasenballsport Leipzig, as whoever the commentator would say, but on loan with Tottenham Hotspur, apparently playing fairly well for them. Was rumored, I understand, to almost be on the brink of joining us this offseason, but then Tottenham came in last minute, and the word on the street is that if Tottenham doesn't exercise their option to buy, he will be coming here, which is interesting. He's only 28 years old. Bit of a weird career.
I think it'd be very dependent on him, like, certainly never playing for the German national team again for him to come here.
Well, yeah, I guess I'll just break out that I did, I'm going to lower my sunglasses here. I did hear about this a few days ago before it ended up kind of spreading around the internet. I was told by somebody that Werner was in the mix, but this source also did tell me that it seemed like a lot more of a sure thing that Werner was coming this summer than this eventual report that came out on Monday did. What I had been told is that, Werner coming here in the summer was like almost set in stone. Whereas this article that came out was saying that there is a lot of kind of dominoes that have to fall for it to happen. There is, like Brit said, Tottenham potentially deciding to exercise a purchase clause on him. There's, like Peaches said, I mean, his consideration as far as remaining a relevant player in Europe so that he can continue with, the German national team. And also just generally, kind of you both hinted at, guy who's still only 28, still has probably another contract or two at, a respectable European side in him if he really wants to grind it out, he and his agent. A little bit of, intrigue there. I guess Peaches, you probably want to offer maybe the tactical insight or whatever. I mean, I don't know if there is a tactical insight other than he would just be better than any striker that we've had in recent times.
You'd be surprised.
Right.
I would say he's like the ultimate version of Tom Barlow, kind of, if he came here. Just like very fast, makes a lot of runs that creates chances, but he's going to miss a lot of them. He's going to miss like 60%, 70% of them. And that's okay because he's always going to be running after it. No matter what.
I'm always reluctant to say. I just never. I always like challenge the premise that there's such thing as just a certain type of striker who loves to miss or just misses a particular amount of the time. I think kind of like we said in the earlier part of the show that most strikers are shit most of the time and then they score one goal. If all strikers finished all their chances, games would be like 10-8. So I think it might be more of a product of just like he's a guy who's been on a lot of high profile teams and been in high profile games where, he's had some misses like strikers do, and that becomes a reputation or whatever. But I guess it's enough of a reputation that I'll take your word for it that he actually does miss more than the average
I would say it's
striker.
kind of like an Alex Muehl thing where, like he's so close a lot of the times and he's like creating such good chances that it reflects on him much more poorly because he himself put himself in such a good position that, why, how can you miss that? But like a lot of them I think are like understandable. Also, I think maybe at the pace of this league, he might just put them in for fun. Who knows?
Did he return to Leipzig on a free?
Yeah, I think so.
So odd. I don't know.
So his contract at Chelsea was only like 3 years or something?
Maybe there was a transfer fee. He only ran out his first contract. He was there actually kind of for a while.
Well, I guess that's my jumping off point to say that, and then kind of like I said, with there being a lot of different contingencies that seem to have to happen for him to come here. I'm not the biggest, and I said this with Forsberg too over the course of the off season, but I'm not the biggest fan of this being kind of the recruitment strategy. I kind of called Forsberg a bit of a hand-me-down. Maybe we just touched on Gift earlier as a more charitable way to put the Forsberg deal. But I just don't like the smell of the team only getting these big, high-profile players once Leipzig doesn't need them anymore and they're surplus on the books at some other Red Bull club. I don't think I think it stinks because that's just a very limited way to recruit, a very limited way to think of, what kind of players your team needs. But then also it implies that, planning for New York and planning for what the New York squad needs is secondary to whatever is going on in Leipzig. I mean, it's an inverse of, the farm team dynamic. I think if, kind of like what we're hearing, that the rumor was that Werner was maybe ready to come here in this past winter, but didn't because Tottenham came into the mix and then they didn't really sign another striker. I mean, that just, has a very weird stench to me of just like the idea in, the Red Bull offices, whether it's Schneider, whether it's Mario Gomez, whether it's Mintzlaff, whatever, is thinking like, oh, New York really needs a striker. Is Werner available? Well, if he's not, then maybe New York doesn't really need a striker. Maybe they can just wait a little bit longer. No, I think the idea should be that you have an independent person running New York whose idea is just to get whatever players New York needs at a given time, not to kind of, do this musical chairs waiting for Leipzig players to open up. I think there needs to be such a more expansive recruitment strategy for a club like this. And I would think that, it was in years past, one of the benefits of being a Red Bull club is that you have, a very diverse and kind of fail-proof recruitment system in place. And I think just waiting for, kind of albatrosses from the Leipzig payroll to open up is just a very faulty way of doing things. And I don't think it's sustainable in the long run, but we shall see.
I feel like, to take an optimistic perspective on this,
sure,
right? I think we could look at this potentially as a mechanism to get the highest quality players we can using the network that we have, while also building out, our own kind of system as well. I mean, I kind of agree with you that
but I mean, my issue is that
it feels like we feel like it's not a consideration to go beyond kind of like
right. And my issue is
first.
that they're going and getting these high profile players, but if this is the only way we're going to get them and the only moments we're going to get them, that's a problem.
Right. But also I wonder if hey, we wait 6 months to get this player. Is this a better option maybe than an alternative that would have been?
Well, that's where I land, I think, is that it's weird if that's the case of oh, well, let's not, make another move that makes this redundant in the meantime, because maybe we can still get him. That's deeply unsatisfying another way too, where it's even for Leipzig's own sake, they should just figure out what they want to do. I fact checked it, and Leipzig did repurchase him from Chelsea.
Got it. Okay.
So it wasn't
really
it wasn't 20 million or something. But yeah, it's what is, I don't know. Are they being unusually sentimental for what I consider Red Bull to be, where they're just want to check in with Timo and see what he's doing and just want to prioritize his career? I don't know. It's a bit weird. It's interesting that you'd be interested in coming over here at 28 already. I think maybe it also just feels part and parcel of larger confusion about high profile European careers these days, where with guys increasingly going to China and Saudi Arabia, and we haven't gotten as many younger guys come. Vela, I guess, is the youngest or big high profile guy to come over here, where he just going and disappointing at Chelsea for a couple years in your mid-20s is not unusual. Many players have done that. And he went back still to a pretty big team in Leipzig. So what is the holdup? I don't know, but it is weird that it would potentially be a very dynamic addition to the squad, and I think we would really be quite dangerous if it happened.
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder too, because there is kind of, I guess, a debate on the fact that he wouldn't fit on their roster right now. Where
Well, and that was kind of the segue where it all arrows seem to be pointing that Von Zera would have to be moved out. To
or
make room.
one of our U22s would have to be bought down to TAM, I think, is what the other alternative
Well,
is.
that's no fun.
Yeah, but that is to say maybe Yenger was a late signing in that kind of like contingency spot where
But
it's
he's
like,
a
like,
right winger. I don't know.
well,
I mean, are we going to make him a
I
forward?
mean, Timo Werner could play as a right
They
winger.
literally
too.
said that he can play fullback in his like
Yeah.
first comments about him the other
But
day.
we still,
so.
also
I
like
guess-
obviously glaring other squad spots.
Maybe
as
Van
well,
Zer is a
but-
good counterexample in a way too, because they just bought Van Zer for who knows why, like last year, and like might sell him. So like they just have money. I guess it's not. It wouldn't be the end of the world to buy someone provisionally, and then Werner makes him redundant.
And then just to like kind of close up my gripes about the context of all this. It's sort of like it's both the aspect of like both paralyzing the club's recruitment just to land these guys, and they were only going to get these guys when they can be funneled through Leipzig. I mean, it's also a thing of just like I want players who belong to the New York Red Bulls. It doesn't feel like Emil Forsberg. I mean, I'll give him credit. Forsberg is doing his best to make it seem like he is here. This is where he would always want to be, and like it was always his dream to be a New York Red Bull or whatever as a boy in Sweden. He's doing a good job of projecting that, but in reality, I don't think anybody's going to ever think of Emil Forsberg as like, the New York Red Bulls legend Emil Forsberg, and, Timo Werner. It's not going to be like, I mean, Thierry Henry, it wasn't even like he belonged to us. I mean, mind you, his charisma was a whole other stratosphere, but, I want players who feel like, there, and this was part of what I was talking about in the offseason with the difference in the Kaku signing. I want to have players who it feels like the absolute peak of their career and the peak of where they want to be is with the New York Red Bulls, and that the place where they would most want to be at the peak of their career is with the New York Red Bulls, and that's they I mean, I feel like this is a clumsy way of putting it, but that they belong to us.
Right.
And when we're just getting these guys at the end of their career after they've done bigger and better stuff with other Red Bull clubs, that just feels very unsatisfying to me, from a cultural standpoint and from what it means for your club to matter, both within the Red Bull orbit and within the broader kind of scene.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't like that element of it either. And I just hope that maybe this is just kind of a stopgap strategy so that they can juice up revenues or whoever knows what, so that they can actually make some more ambitious signings that are maybe a little trickier to put together, but pay off more in the end.
Yeah, it reminds me of the balance that the squad had, or the club had, with Henry and BWP a bit, where Henry was the guy coming in the twilight of his career, and we were borrowing, or happy to have his prestige and everything and kind of bringing that seriousness to the club. But it ended up facilitating and fostering a guy who really felt like our own.
Right.
And I think that created a vibe where, you also got guys like Question who came in, who was, less at the end of his career than Henry was, but, still had a whole career until he got here. And, obviously it didn't, things got a little stale with Sasha, but while he was here, he also really felt like our own. I think it was a step towards really building that. I guess the best case scenario is that, maybe Forsberg and if Werner comes over too, could help cultivate that in some younger, newer players for us too. But yeah, just having guys parachute in should not be seen as the be all end all. And it's a bit weird, I don't know, to have this be happening after all the years of Omer Damari and
Right.
Samuel Tete, and I don't know, part of me still has a little bit of a whiplash.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think there's also something. I'm obviously sipping the Red Bull a little bit, I guess, but there's something, mostly because I really want Timo Werner to play for the New York Red Bulls. But I think there's also something to be like said to be able to bring in kind of that caliber of player, regardless of what club you're at, and its ability to raise the status of the people around you. Because I think Henri did that to a certain extent when he got here. You know, like the other players who did feel more like ours kind of like felt like they could be raised to that level of where he plays. So, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, if we do use the Red Bull network to sign people, it would be more towards guys who are like really cool instead of, you know.
I would prefer if we're only going to make big signings from Red Bull teams, I would prefer to get whatever the Hungarian guy with the crazy name who went to Liverpool is. I want those guys. I want Holland.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, seriously though, like, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't think of New York, you know, especially if you're going to like finally say New York is, you know, a serious club and we're going to finally treat New York like a big part of the Red Bull family. I don't know why you wouldn't see New York higher up on the food chain than Leipzig and it as a destination for players to want to be.
Well, I think
Salzburg,
ultimately,
for sure.
I don't think players want to be in New York more than Leipzig too.
Well, I mean,
you know, it's just the problem.
Right.
They all want to be in Dubai, but good news because you guys can be like, come to the American Dream Mall. It's the same shit.
Right.
All these Dubai ads I'm getting now, one, they make me sick, but two, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. I've seen that.
I've been to the Mr. Beast Burger, Dubai.
I have some good news. Some funny good news currently right now.
Yeah.
In the CCL. Pachuca 5, Philadelphia Union 0.
Jeez.
Oh my
Jeez
God.
Louise. Is it in Philly or Pachuca?
I think it's in Pachuca.
It'd be funny if Philly fires Curtin and he goes to like RB Salzburg or something.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Is Columbus isn't in CCL right
They
now?
are. They actually,
Oh,
they're the
geez.
ones who beat Houston. They played just back to back. They had a break last weekend. And they beat Houston 2-1. They just wrapped. That's the game that just wrapped right when we started recording to this. But that's a good segue. We should start wrapping up. And we're playing the next 2 weeks. We're playing Columbus and Miami. We're playing Columbus away, but this is sort of a top of the league gauntlet for us a little bit. Granted, three matches in. That's all. But Columbus, Miami, and ourselves all have 7 points from 3 games. Actually, correction, Miami has 7 points from 4 games. They did lose this last weekend. So, Columbus are also the reigning MLS Cup champions. Reminder. They're coached by Wilfred Nancy, who has demonstrated to himself to be quite capable. We're going to be going away to Columbus, as I said. And for me, this is the first game of the season, even with my adjusted optimistic enthusiasm, where I'm looking at this and saying, yeah, you know what? Dropping 3 points here would not be unprecedented or
The end of the world.
the end of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would be distraught beyond all belief. I've put all of my hopes into an invincible season. I've put all of my life savings into a sports bet for that. So if we lose, I'd be like...
That's part of your parlay.
Yeah, I'm destroyed. If
You have a parlay on top of an invincible season.
Exactly. Yeah. We win every coin toss and we have an invincible season.
For this bit, imagine I'm like on our MLS in like 2014. I've put all of my money in Darlington Nagbe coin. And it is epic. He's still playing. But yeah. What are our expectations for this match?
I would like to see the Diamond become a more regular and kind of base system. And if that means having to play Lewis Morgan as a forward to facilitate it, all the better. So honestly, that is kind of like my tactical looking glass for, this next stretch of games. So
Only tweak I think I'd make is just starting Dylan Nealis. There's just no reason to have Duncan.
yeah,
That's a good shout, especially if we're looking at being a little bit more defensive.
Yeah.
He's been quite solid so far. It'll be interesting to see if we're anticipating bunkering more, if maybe we go 5 at the back earlier
I was going
on.
to say, I hope we don't see it. I feel like it actually puts us in a little bit of vulnerable position sometimes because of the way that we give up width in that 5 in the back.
I mean, I think it would be interesting to see it from the start. I won't rule it out because, I think it is different to adjust in the last 10 minutes of a game and have someone fresh coming in. And
But also, I kind of wish if we do 5 in the back that one of the center backs is actually Dylan Nealis.
I don't know. I guess, I wouldn't be distraught to see 5 in the back here. And if it doesn't go great, then it's, still a game away to Columbus where it's not the end of the world. It's not 3 points we were necessarily banking on. But yeah. I thought Corey Burke also made his debut for the season.
Still alive. He
looked quite active. Wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of Corey Burke.
Yeah. Play like a forward.
Yeah. I just wish we had another midfield body around that we could rotate in,
Here's a name some of the older Red Bulls fans might remember. Drew Yearwood.
Yeah. That reminds me, I was going to say, to this Red Bull discussion, sure, higher profile players, but, I do want a Youba Diarra every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw me one, just for old time's sake.
God, love that guy.
A little bit of Youba for
We
the
did
boys.
see Wiki Carmona play again.
Sure.
Not the same. All right. You heard us. More Youba.
That's the message.
All right.
See you in Columbus.